What's good, YouTube? And welcome to the house. One of the most fun things for me as a Banlist happen is to watch the scramble, the ridiculous buyouts, the craze that people go for, just off the energy that the Banlist is here. Not using those big brain plays to buy out cards, but instead just going relatively crazy. Buying out Atlantean Dragoons at the $90 price point, there were some around 86 I believe, and just going ham on it. Relisting at the point of 225. Alright, and 200 over here on eBay, and then 230. Let's see if this one's even near mint. I see some edging. It's close, it's close. It says new in the description. Near mint here. Alright, we'll give it to them. Their listing says near mint, but realistically, what kind of a splash will this make in the metagame? In the OCG, it's at 3 and it's relatively not doing so much, but I do know that players in the TCG, when they love a certain deck, really push it past a point that it would be in the OCG, such as Paleozoics. It made a relatively big wave over here, and it, over in the OCG, it wasn't doing much. So we'll kind of see how it impacts. The supers are actually getting bought out to the point of pretty high price point there too. It is a fan favorite deck, but most of the people that really wanted to have this already had it hollowed out unless they had to sell it for bad life decisions or because they were letting go of the game, so to speak. So I don't think this price will stay around here. Expect it to quickly fall. We've only seen really high-end staples stay anywhere near this, such as Max C, and even then, during its prime, like 120s-ish. So take this with a grain of sea salt. Okay, I'm done. For real. Neo-Spacian Grand Mole. We're kind of in the phase. We're going to have 3 really obvious things and then the stuff not directly from the list that spiked after. So we got the kind of obvious stuff here first. Neo-Spacian Grand Mole Ultimate Rare was bought out. Its norm was $8. And there are no near mints on all of TCG Player. Weird. The buyout was very fast, very quick. And we come over here and there's actually some interesting things to think about, as the dual terminal didn't even get touched. 85 copies at 58 cents. Somebody looked at that and said, I would rather try to put the market price of one Grand Mole around the price of every single DT this one man is selling. Alright, seems legit. We come over here and we see that $34 is the lowest unlimited near mint. There are no first eds mint on market at all. It should be interesting to see what people try to push them at, especially since there is future Neo-Spacian support, likely to be a TCG exclusive, as it was in a product description but never showed up in the OCG. I believe we have a Noble Knight and a Neo-Spacian support due for us, and the OCG didn't seem to get that, so we should be getting that as, I assume, exclusives. But here we look at people used a bit of their big brain plays and only went for a few things like the ultis originally, but I think the DTs are a pretty good buy. I think they'll be $2 slowly. The rest of the versions, like the Pure Commons, the Dual Saga Ultras, I don't know that they'll rise too much, but they're certainly pretty good, decent buys right now if you find other cards from the same sellers you're getting. But I'd kind of ignore the commons, maybe the original rare, maybe if it's first ed. But I think any hollow foil version is going to do better for you. Specifically for me, the DTs. Hobby Leagues, that's a tough sale because Hobby Leagues typically are not good for tournament play, so you might want to back off that. But if you're a Hobby League collector, you better rush, because $2 for this might be the lowest it is at for a while. It could jump to around $5. Compulsory Evacuation Device. This one was a really good peel off the ban list by Konami. Good job. $70 for the super is going to be a bit much. I think this was around $30-$35 in its prime, but hey, inflation, etc. I still don't know that it'll be heavily used, but it could be an interesting tool for Altergeist now that you can consistently see it since you're playing 3 of them things, if you choose to. So I want to see some testing done with that, with the Altergeist. And the Secret Rare has risen to $8 from around its $3 setting point. You have all sorts of other interesting versions. The Yugi's World, usually considered better than Joey's World, sitting here at 10. And we come over to eBay. It's a little better. He lists both types, puts it at 6. We see 650 quickly coming down a little faster than TCG Player. But I could see this resting at $5 on the secret, maybe $7 for the Yugi's World. It really depends. And then the super rares, I could see coming back down to earth around 40 to 35 because its market price was 20, and a lot of the sellers will be happy with that, getting their plus, so to speak. Compulse, like I said, I could see interesting applications, perhaps in Altergeist, but you already have a monster that does Compulse, right? Like, what do you really need a second? Saving your bounce is nice, and getting to use this if they have an extension play could be nice. Maybe, because you don't always want a torrential, right? You don't always want to. Let's get into the indirect influxes, and Super Agent went a little crazy after the ban list announcement. A lot of people are thinking Spyral Nightmares are the best deck. Ancient Fairy wasn't that big of a hit. I would agree that this is probably one of my candidates for top deck. And it's sitting at $24 and then $25. We saw it creeping back down to 16 and zoop, back up all the way. We see it actually at $20 from some foreign sellers before it quickly goes back up on eBay too. It should be interesting to see if it calms down, maybe rests at 18 to 20, or if it's going to continue. It's going to continue to get hype since we're in WCQ season, and a lot of players might rush towards and pick this deck. The Tufts are still sitting around $6, not really moving too much from where they were at when we looked at them last, but you might want to go ahead and get your Helixes now, maybe one or two of them. I would think most players play two. You might want to consider getting that now while it's still cheaper. Remember $30 Helixes? I remember. Just some considerations. Reincarnation, Trickstar's dodged that ban list without a single slap on the wrist. Reincarnation already jumping up from 22 towards 27. I think this, it's really said well. This deck will never be the best deck. It's always going to be a good counter deck. And I think that's a really well put thing. Even if it wins a YCS, it probably wasn't the best deck for the weekend, but perhaps the pilot just managed to skillfully counter a certain meta. I think it's always going to have that kind of darkness to it. And overall, the rest of the prices, nothing too crazy happening. Candina, we could see it go back towards 4, but she has alternate versions at this point. So just kind of keep in mind through all of this, what's my WCQ deck gonna be, since I just lost both Grass and my Pendulum Magicians. Next up, Invoked Mechaba and the Invocations. Nothing really moving here. Just a note, this wasn't hit at all either, and a lot of people thought it would be. Invocation has been dropping, but at the same time, it's kind of naturally getting phased out of the meta. We do get a Mech Knight link earlier that helps this deck, but a lot of people are just assuming it's naturally fading out. I think it still has potential, and so you might want to pick your time for a cheaper Invoke deck as it settles through the cracks of the meta. And Electromite is kind of just sitting where it's at. I think there is a possibility for Metal Foe's True Draco to appear and be a thing. But losing Masterpiece just hurts so gosh dang bad. We'll see where Pendulums are going to recover and what they're going to do with Electromite, having lost Astrograph. But I do expect this card to still be very, very good, and it's generically good for Pendulums as time moves on. So it depends on what they create. And finally, just consider the Nightmares. It's probably the deck to think about in terms of playing a deck using the Nightmares and the extra. You might want to get the cheaper ones now, especially like Goblin, and consider the Seeker. Like, don't let this pass you by while it's cheaper, especially with the WCQ. But if you're not playing the WCQ, you might want to wait till the off season. It really all comes down to if you're one of those 2,000 duelists watching that really plans to come out to the WCQ and compete. And then my final note here is they have cleared the way for the Brandish to wreak havoc, aka the Sky Strikers for us. Now there's no prices up for it yet, but do consider and take this set very, very seriously. It really seems like they've opened a path for it, and the meta could really diverge for our WCQ around the Dark Saviors booster box and the Sky Strikers. just keep that in mind as you are picking out your decks. I feel like Spyral, Nightmare, Sky Strikers, there's going to be several decks vying for power, and this will definitely be the deck to beat on the floor, in my opinion. But don't sleep on other decks. Don't sleep on them at all. There's plenty of choices. So thanks for watching today's Market Watch, and it's crazy out here. Banlist day. It's always really fun for me to kind of see the things going around. Let me know in the comment section below if anything else has gone crazy that I have missed, and I'll try to feature it tomorrow. It's kind of just one of my favorite times of the year. I love seeing the madmen go doing things like this, and then I love seeing how the people are assuming the meta is going to go and sniffing around trying to figure out how they're going to conquer the WCQ, especially on this one.